I'm Mr. eTutor here again, your mystery tutor at mysterytutor.com, and welcome to video module 2-3. In this module, we're going to talk about something that's extremely important to all test takers for the SAT, and that is the guessing strategy. Almost all SAT preparation companies, including the College Board actually, give the same guessing advice, and it's probably one of the worst pieces of advice you'll ever hear in your entire life. Before we get into the various guessing strategies, let's take a second and review the SAT's wrong answer penalty in the first place. It's important to start there because all guessing strategies are based on the wrong answer penalty. As we discussed in an earlier module, the SAT will penalize you 1/4 of 1 raw point every time you answer a multiple choice question incorrectly. You may already have known that you lose 1/4 of a raw point every time you answer a question incorrectly, but a lot of people don't understand exactly why that is. Why is it 1/4 of a point and not 1/2 or 1/10 or 1/3? So the wrong answer penalty works like this. Imagine that I have 10 consecutive questions and I'm going to guess on every single one of them. On the SAT, this is an exceptionally bad idea, by the way, but bear with me for a second. If there are 5 answer choices for each question and 10 questions, then I can expect to be correct once for every 4 times that I'm incorrect. In other words, I'll be correct 1 in 5 times. Now, given the SAT's scoring system, with this sort of a performance, I would gain 1 raw point every time I'm correct, and I would lose 1/4 of a raw point every time I'm incorrect. If you do the math quickly, you'll see plus 1 point minus 1/4 times 4 points, plus 1 point minus 1/4 times 4 points. The ultimate effect would be no change in my score. In other words, because I'm penalized 1/4 of a point every time I'm wrong, guessing randomly on the test should not affect my score at all. So this is what should happen, theoretically, when you guess on the SAT with no strategy at all. The guessing strategy that everyone uses tries to turn these odds in your favor. Imagine for a second what would happen if we could somehow rule out 3 answer choices for each question, and make it so that every guess, instead of being from 5 answer choices, was only from 2 answer choices. It would look something like this. So, for the sake of argument, if we're able to rule out choices C, D, and E on every question, and only guess from choices A and B, instead of being correct once every 5 times, we should now be correct once every 2 times. It would look a little bit something like this. Now, the supposed trick behind this guessing strategy comes from the fact that the SAT doesn't know that we've managed to narrow down the number of answer choices from 5 to 2 for each question. So even though we've been correct 1 out of every 2 times, the SAT will only penalize us as though we've been correct 1 out of every 5 times. So we'll still continue to receive 1 raw point every time that we're correct. And we should only lose 1/4 of a raw point every time we're wrong. Again, we're penalized as though we were correct once every 5 times, but really we're correct once every 2 times. The result, as you can see, is that the points you accumulate from guessing right will quickly outpace the wrong answer penalty. I want to stress that in order for the guessing penalty to work, it's not necessary that you eliminate 3 answer choices every time. As long as you eliminate even 1 answer choice before you guess, you should still come out at least slightly ahead. I just went ahead and did 3 answer choices so the demonstration would be a little bit more dramatic. And this is it. This is basically the universal guessing strategy. As I mentioned before, almost every SAT preparation source on earth will tell you to try this strategy. At first blush, it seems like a very intelligent thing to do. After all, you seem to be able to gain points without actually knowing how to answer any of the questions. But there's one major flaw with the guessing strategy that everyone uses. It has nothing to do with the math. If we look at the simple math being used, we can see everything stands up pretty well. The problem is that the guessing strategy, like all mathematical arguments, makes 2 assumptions. Those 2 assumptions, unfortunately, turn out not to be correct for almost every guesser on the SAT, and that's why the guessing strategy will fail in the end. Those 2 assumptions are the following. First, The guessing strategy assumes that we correctly eliminate incorrect answer choices. In other words, in the previous example, if the correct answer to a particular choice had been D, our chance of guessing correctly from A and B on that question would not have been 1 and 2, it would have been 0. You can't guess correctly if you've eliminated the correct answer from consideration. That seems fairly obvious. The second assumption made by the guessing strategy is that all of our guesses will be distributed randomly. Any argument that relies on probability is assuming a random distribution. Very few test takers are actually able to satisfy both assumptions with any sort of regularity, and it makes a lot of sense. We've already discussed the fact that the SAT is extremely sneaky and devious when it creates wrong answer choices, and it creates those wrong answer choices according to standards. Those standards for the wrong answer choices are designed so that the wrong answer choices will look very attractive to a student who can't answer a question correctly in the first place. And if you're in the position of having to guess on a question, you already don't know how to find the answer. If you could find the answer, you would simply answer the question and not be guessing. So very few students who are going to try the guessing strategy will make it past the first step with any sort of regularity. But even if you do make it past the first step, even if there is some way to look at the question, not know the answer, but still know that certain answer choices must not be correct, even if you get that far, almost nobody makes the follow-up guess based on a totally random selection. Instead, you make your guess based on what you think you understand about the question. But as we've already discussed, if you understood the question completely in the first place, you wouldn't be guessing. So, the thing about a particular SAT question that keeps you from answering it in the first place is also likely to cause you to eliminate the correct answer choice from consideration when you go ahead and guess. And even if it doesn't, even if you do keep the correct answer choice in consideration when you guess, the guess you make is likely to be based on your flawed and incomplete understanding of the question in the first place. This means that almost no one is able to guess their way to a high score on the SAT. And you can test this. Go talk to people you know who consistently score above 700 on every section. You will find that none of them consider guessing on the SAT to be a major part of their strategy. If you guess on the SAT, you're likely to end up right in the middle of the scoring range, around 500 per section. A qualified tutor would never suggest that you make guessing a major part of your approach to the SAT. The SAT, as we've discussed before, is all about standards. It's all about repetition. It's all about knowing in advance exactly what will appear on the test and knowing exactly how to exploit it and defeat each question. Guessing has no part in that approach. In the next module, we'll discuss the second hidden problem with guessing, which is perhaps even more damaging than the damage it can do to your score. Thanks for watching. If you need to watch this video again to understand what's wrong with guessing, I strongly encourage you to do it. There are no high-scoring guessers on the SAT. It's just a fact. Thanks for watching. Make sure you watch the next module, which will explain what you should do instead. And remember, it's easier than you think.